Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you in another video. All right, so I don't remember if I broke down the Sixers and the Celtics series. I honestly don't remember. I know I've mentioned just about every series that's been matched up. I don't think I labeled it if I did, so I just wanted to get into what I thought there. I'm pretty certain if I did speak on them, I told y'all what my prediction would be. So, if you already know, I remember what I was thinking at the time, so I'm going to tell you what I think I said. So hopefully it all lines up and makes sense. My memory's kind of trash. All right, so Sixers Celtics. I did a little more studying on those two rosters last night, which is why I wanted to come back here and talk a little bit more about those two teams. Because even if I did have something to say, I got a little more understanding. The Sixers have some forwards that I think could create some problems for the Celtics. And I think the Sixers are a slightly deeper team than the Celtics. And this is making it for an interesting situation. I know the Celtics have the home court advantage in the situation, so that helps. And I also know that Joel Embiid is considered doubtful or questionable. I think they upgraded him to questionable. But they said that his knee injury was a bit more severe than they thought. So that's the word right now. Bit more severe than they thought, but he's not out for the series. Nothing like that. So I think the likelihood that we see him in game one is kind of iffy right now. And I think that does determine a whole lot in how the trajectory of the series goes. As I told my LA Lakers, since we don't have home court advantage, it's very important that we win early games. I feel the same way about the Philadelphia 76ers not having home court advantage in the series. Because the Celtics are very good, to say the least, you do not want to find yourself in a situation where you leave Boston 0-2, because the Boston Celtics can win on the road. And even though you can win at home, you want to, I guess I'm not going to tell people what they should want, but in situations like that, to be on the safe side, you want to think about the pessimistic side of winning at home versus this, what they can do on the road. You want to consider what they're doing on the road more than what you're doing at home when you're down 0-2. You see what I'm saying? Or considering what you don't want when being down 0-2. Which is to be down 0-2. And so in this situation, don't be down 0-2 is what I would tell the Philadelphia 76ers. Now the question is, can they overcome not having Joel in that first game, and will they be able to leave Boston a winner because of it? What if he can't go in game two? I don't like how this is starting for the Philadelphia 76ers. But the thing about it is this. Philly can kind of morph, so to speak, into a smaller team if they need to, and still have a lot of energy. You look at a guy like Paul Reed, you look at a guy like Montrezl Harrell, PJ Tucker, McDaniels, George Niang. All of those guys have a lot of energy. They bring pep to their step. They hit big shots. And then you look at Tobias Harris. That's a lot of forwards to throw at the Celtics. And you look at the Celtics, they got Jason Tatum, obviously, Jaylen Brown. You're looking at Grant Williams. And then of course you're looking at their centers, Horford and Time Lord, right? But then you start looking around and you look at their roster. You're like, okay, is Sam Merrill gonna be able to deal with these forwards that's coming at him? You know what I mean? It starts getting to a point where it's like, all right, Blake Griffin, what do you expect to get from him going forward? Is he going to help you in these series? Can he help you against some of these matchups? This is where it starts getting a little tricky for me in regards to Boston. Very low key. People say they're deep, but they are really not. The Boston Celtics have about 4 players on their team that they probably do not want to see on the floor at all. And if you can find a way to expose that, you're going to get them. You're going to get them. Now, the one thing that they can always hang their hat on is the fact that their top 8 players are so very, very good playing together and very, very good, period. These are excellent basketball players. Dealing with the defensive minds of their guards is a headache in and of itself, but then you got to deal with the rim protection and the intelligence of their centers. Horford, and it's just so much, smart is what you're dealing with. So much pressure on the rim with Jaylen Brown and efficiency from around the mid-range. And then you got Jason Tatum, who's stretching the floor and then doing things defensively that turns defense into offense. And got disruptive players in every position playing two-way. Malcolm Brogdon, sixth man of the year. So you look at the Celtics, and you just say the chances of them ever needing to ever use those guys isn't really high, which is why they probably let those positions kind of. And then you look at a guy like Peyton Pritchard and say, if they call on him, there's a chance he can go for 30. He's one of those dudes. He's just sitting back there. I don't know if is he healthy or what. Maybe he's a little too small to put in the rotation. I think that's probably what the problem is. But he's such a fantastic stretch the floor guy, and he's so very talented. He's not catching me off guard if they decide to call on him in a game 6. I know what he can do, and I'm gonna put a good defender on him. So it's like they have depth, but it's not at the forward position. And the Sixers have that depth at the forward position, and then you're dealing with Joel Embiid. Now, Robert Williams is healthy. That's the good thing for the Celtics. Robert Williams, Al Horford, those guys are healthy, and they're rolling. So I do think that Joel Embiid is going to have his hands full with those defenders. You saw what happened to Anthony Davis and throughout the course of the series against Jaren Jackson and Tillman. Joel Embiid is going to have some stuff like that going on in the series, especially dealing with the knee. He ain't going to be himself, and it's going to be a bit of a headache trying to deal with the Celtics front court. So, I think the Celtics, at the end of the day, especially since they're coming in healthy, you just got to feel real good about them in this series. The home court advantage, it just is not looking good. But here's one thing you can look at. Tyrese Maxey on top of all those forwards, and then James Harden on top of all those forwards. That's what I'm looking at. All of those forwards. I cannot shake it. Jason Tatum's going to have to deal with these dudes, Jaylen Brown. And if Grant Williams has a bad series, if for some reason Derek White doesn't play the same way in this series as he did in the last, it can get a little tricky. It can get a little tricky. Marcus Smart is obviously a high-level talent at this point, defensive player of the year last year, healthy. So he's somebody that you have to consider in a major way. That's what I was saying about the defense of those guards. They're going to be thrown at James Harden, thrown at Tyrese Maxey. And how they handle those guards will ultimately determine how well they handle any and everything that's thrown at them, whether Joel's out there or not, in my humble opinion. Because if they're getting destroyed and not giving production, Joel can go for 50. They still going to lose. So, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, Marcus Smart, those are the players I'm looking at. They're going to have to win their matchups defensively. They're going to have to be very disruptive to Maxey and Harden. And so these are things that I'm looking at, I think can really determine stuff. It's just you see neutralizing players on the floor that are going to attack the Sixers' strengths. You know what I'm saying? The things that the Sixers are going to try to lean on to be successful, they're going to have good defensive players in those positions. So that's what the Celtics can really throw at them. And then the efficiency of a 30-point Jaylen Brown, 30-point Tatum night, which seems to be coming every night these days. So that's why I think the Sixers are in trouble. I really do. I think the Sixers are very much in trouble. But I cannot underestimate how much force the Sixers forwards are going to be coming at the Celtics with. And if they can just be good, if all of those forwards, if all 6 of those dudes can just be at their absolute best, they will beat the Sixers in this series. They will beat the Sixers in this series. I'm telling you right now, that's what it really comes down to, how well those guys are playing. Paul Reed, Tobias Harris, I'm going to just try to name as many of them as I can. Montrezl Harrell, McDaniels, as I've already mentioned. These are guys going to have to play to the best of their ability. They're going to have to stretch the floor. They're going to have to play good defense. They're going to have to be disruptive. PJ Tucker, he's got to have a really impactful series. It's the playoffs. This is the time for PJ Tucker. He has had a very quiet season, but he's in shape and he's healthy right now. This is the time I expect for him to do disruptive stuff. Marcus Smart is going to be doing the same things on the other end for the Celtics. So it's going to be on PJ Tucker to be loud. Even if he can't be very productive, he needs to be flopping, all different types of things, trying to get stops and just it's completely and utterly disruptive. I expect to see a whole lot of PJ Tucker, just like he's like this for every team he plays for in the playoffs. This is going to be a big series for him, even if the production is not represented in the stats. So, and then Al Horford. See, Al Horford makes the Celtics impossible. As long as he's on the floor playing his best, the Celtics probably did not lose. They probably didn't lose. They don't lose very much when he's at his best. So him stretching the floor, rebounding the ball, making plays for other people, getting steals and stuff like that. Al Horford is such a cerebral basketball mind, and he's going to continue to be disruptive. His game isn't predicated on any real speed or anything like that. And so I just understand as long as he's out there playing well, complimenting the center position, you're solidified well. But he's going to have his hands full. See, that's the thing. I don't know what Doc Rivers is going to do. But, obviously Joel Embiid will be back some point in the series. That's a lot of energy there. It's a lot of energy. And while he's out, I keep circling back to a guy like Paul Reed. I know he can go for a double-double. I know the energy, him and Trez, you throw those guys on the floor for long enough time, and McDaniels is so much energy they're going to be throwing out there rebounding the ball. So I think rebounding is going to be really interesting in this series. Because if Joel's plays in Game 1, I don't know if the Boston Celtics are favored to win the boards in this series. As good as Horford and Williams are, and of course Tatum and Brown are, I think the Sixers may just have a little more there with Joel. Just Joel alone. And the acquisition of McDaniels and PJ Tucker give them some toughness and some a bit more flexibility on the wing that they haven't had. And plus, they've been using Thibault the last couple of years, and they didn't really use him as much as they should have defensively because they didn't want him to shoot the ball very much. So I think they have a bit more of what they would otherwise use more this year. So I think, they're probably a deeper team. And, it's just like anything else. When you're talking about the Boston Celtics, health is really the story there. You can see a situation where if they don't stay healthy with a few different positions here and there, of course this series can change. Just like you look at it right now with Joel not being out there in the first game potentially, and feeling really good about the Celtics in the situation. So, I think if Joel's good to go to start the series, a lot will be determined on whether or not the Sixers are able to win one of those two games in Boston or both of those two games in Boston. If for some reason Philly walks away from Boston a winner, I think this series goes a long distance. If for some reason Philly can't win any of those two games in Boston, I don't think this series goes very far. That's really where my head is. If it has a split, then the series probably goes 6. But if for some reason either one of those teams go for 2, I think the series could end in 5 either way. If the Celtics win the first 2 games, Celtics in 5. If the Sixers win the first 2 games, Sixers in 5. I really believe this. And the reason why I say that is because if the Sixers were to win the first 2 games, if they head this thing back home with Joel Embiid getting healthier as the series progresses, they're going to ride the crowd and probably take one of those 2 games. You know what I mean? And probably finish it off in Boston. That's a lot of winning on the road, though. That's a lot of winning on the road. So I don't know about that. But you figure if they're able to, which doesn't seem likely, then that's how I see the series going. So at this point, I don't see it going that way. You got to look at what's in front of you, and that's Joel Embiid with a knee. Joel Embiid with a knee turns you into a small team who's running a lot of Montrezl Harrell. It's not anybody really down there that's going to even be comparable in size, and suddenly you're looking at Robert Williams probably being the biggest player on the floor. That's not good for you if you're the Sixers. Even though you can throw a lot at them, that's still very, very, very much a nightmare for your guards trying to drive at the rim. And James Harden, this far in the season, you just expect from him to disappear at some point, expect from him to run out of gas at some point. It's just what the history's shown us. So Tyrese Maxey's going to have a big series, and the problem is he's going to have them guards coming at him defensively. So it's just looking bad for the Sixers, man. It's looking bad. The only thing I can honestly say, though, is that if they can throw enough of those forwards on the floor at Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, maybe they can force those guys into having lesser games. And if that's the case, you can expose a need for them to find other people to beat them offensively, and maybe you can get lucky. But Brogdon is going to play well in that situation. I expect for him to go for 30. That's the high-level talent that they provide themselves. And then, of course, when you got Derek White hitting shots and playing D, Marcus Smart down there doing the same thing. So I just don't think this is going to be the greatest series for James Harden. and Tyrese Maxey because of those dang guards down there in Boston. And Jaylen Brown, you just continuing to drive, and get 30-point games, 40-point games. Yeah, man. Boston in about 6. I say Boston is 6 because I believe that the Philadelphia 76ers see the urgency in getting one of those first 2 games in Boston. And if Joel misses the first one, maybe he'll be lucky enough to feel good enough to play in the second one. So yeah, Celtics maybe in 6. Yeah, I'll give them 6 games there. But I will tell you the truth. Those Philly forwards are forgotten about. But by the end of the series, they won't be. I can assure you that they won't be. That's where they're gonna really be able to attack those guys. I wouldn't be surprised if Jason Tatum doesn't have the greatest series, not the greatest series, because if they want to throw all of their defensive players at him, they should be able to neutralize him to some degree. And so it's a dang shame for the Philadelphia 76ers that Joel isn't healthy and going into this series. I think that's what it really comes down to. If he was sharp and 100%, this teeters on whether or not Robert Williams can slow him down, in my humble opinion, because he would be the best player on the floor with respect to Jason Tatum. That would be undisputable. But with him having a knee, now you're looking at different rotational situations. And when Doc is thrown in that situation, playoffs, I don't know. He's known for getting 3-1 leads, and then giving them back. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. I never really put too much faith in Doc, unfortunately, in these situations as well. But Joe Mazzulla is a rookie coach. That's something to think about. But I don't know how much of that's going to play into what we're seeing, given the fact that the Celtics had a rookie coach last year and got to the finals. So, same guys, better talent now that you got Brogdon down there. So, yeah, man. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see any way for Philly to expose the weaknesses of the Celtics without a healthy Joel Embiid in this series. I don't see that. Those and the guards that they need to play well, like your Maxey, in my mind's eye, I can't see those guys getting past those guards. Harden and Maxey getting past Marcus Smart and Derek White, and of course Malcolm Brogdon. I'm thinking all 3 of them together. That's a lot. James Harden is an amazing player, so he's capable, but that's a lot. And so I just don't know how much defense Philly's going to play with their guards at the same time. Can you stop Derek White? Can you stop Malcolm Brogdon? I don't know. Well, we'll see. This is where it becomes a different conversation, because now I'm like, all right, Melton. That's who comes into mind. DeAnthony, Melton, and Shake Milton. How much of them can be involved in this series? How much defense is Tobias Harris going to play in this series? How much offense can they contribute? Because DeAnthony Melton is a guy, I've already seen what he can do against the Lakers. He had his best game. 7 steals, ridiculous amount of 3-point shots in the same game. It was really, really, really devastating how much he kicked our butts at home. So, he needs to be incorporated into the conversation when you're considering the offsetting of that defense and who's going to be able to slow down Jaylen Brown, who's going to be able to slow down Marcus Smart, White, Brogdon. He is who's going to have to do some of that. And McDaniels on the perimeter as well. So if they can win their matchups and outplay Marcus Smart and Derek White, provide more defense on their side than those guys are providing their team themselves, you throw in some P.J. Tucker and the energy of a Montrezl Harrell. I think he's important in this series if Joel is out. He can't just be kind enough. He's going to have to play well. And I know what he can do because we had him for a year. If he can give you some of that undersized energy, 2-hand dunk, shake the rim stuff, maybe 2 or 3 of those a game in this series, I think can go a long way in igniting their crowd at home, particularly in the second half of the series. So these are the type of things I'm thinking about. It just depends on how well Joel is looking by then. If he doesn't have any setbacks with the knee, will determine whether or not they even have a chance, in my humble opinion. But their small ball lineups are solid, man. With those forwards, they got a good number of defensive players to throw at you, even if Joel ain't on the floor. That if you overshoot, if you're a Boston Celtics, it could turn you into a team that gives up transition buckets to a guy like Tyrese Maxey and a guy like McDaniels. You don't want to have bad shooting nights against Philly. They can't get in transition, even though that's not really their forte. Jason Tatum, Tobias Harris. If for any reason Tobias Harris averages like 30 points in this series, that could really go a long way. I don't know what level he's playing at, but he's a guy who can really pop. So if for some reason he overachieves, that can really help. But DeAnthony Melton, if he's a no-show defensively, if he's not really contributing very much, I don't think Philly can really do much because there's so much production coming from those guards over there in Boston that you're just going to need him to play at a very high level when he's out there. So, that's that. He's a huge X factor because I know he can steal the ball as good as anybody in the league right now, and they're going to need him to offset that defense over there. So, yeah, man, that's the answer. He's the answer to all that defense for them guards, man. Because if you look at the Boston Celtics, the one thing that really scares me is how the heck is James Harden and Tyrese Maxey going to flex with those dudes being so talented defensively? How in the world can they get their 30 points or whatever the heck they're going to do? James Harden's 15 points, 15 assists. How are they going to do that with Smart hounding the hell out of them? And the answer is, I don't know if they can. I don't know. I don't know that they can. With Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown also being disruptive and drawing fouls. Foul trouble will be a big thing in this series, But I'll tell you this, if you're a Boston Celtics fan, this is what I've surmised, man. Jason Tatum, playmaking Jason Tatum is a really good Jason Tatum. Obviously, if he's hot and he's hitting shots, you love that. But when he's not looking to really get his teammates involved and he's looking to overshoot and it's not falling, that's usually when they're not very good. So, triple-double Jason Tatum doesn't lose. I can tell you that right now. A triple-double Jason Tatum doesn't lose. So, I'm just curious to see where he's at. Obviously, this is a year later from the last time I really paid close attention to them because obviously as a Laker fan, I don't watch them very much, to say the least. But it's one of those situations where from afar, I know that Jason Tatum is a good playmaker, and if he caters his game to getting his other offensive talent around him involved, it opens up so much for him in the jump shot. And once he sees one or two fall, it's over with. So, he has a bunch of ways he can attack you. And at the end of the day, if he's dominating down there, since he's the healthiest superstar of the two sides, if he's dominating down there and having a very high efficiency thing, this series can end very quickly. If Joel Embiid's not down there. So that's really what I see, man. I'm wondering if Joel's knee injury, given the fact that they want to tell us all these different types of information in regards to his knee being worse, but kind of questionable, I don't know. But if that's going to be a problem, which obviously it looked like it will be, he's a 290-pound center, maybe even bigger than that, 7 feet tall. He's not a small guy, so anything wrong with the wheels is a problem. As I see that being a problem, it would ultimately be the problem for the Sixers, man. It'll be the problem. James Harden would have to go ape-ish. And I just think that the defense is a little too centered on him for that. But the Boston Celtics have dropped some games you think they wouldn't throughout the course of the season. It's given us some indicators that their DNA is not quite what it was last year, especially defensively. They're more so a scoring team this year. So I do think that the scoring in this series can be pretty damn high, even if Joel ain't down there, depending on how well those defensive guards are able to stop those Philadelphia guys and how well those forwards are able to score again. So McDaniels, high-level defensive player, can do some offensive things. If he's really, really high-level in this series, he can move the needle himself. And then again, I look on the other side and say Grant Williams. He's had a bad season. If he could step in and start to play like the Grant Williams from the finals, then obviously you'll see the Celtics ascend rather quickly. But, a lot of this is determining on how well Coach Mazzulla strategizes against Doc Rivers. He has to win that coaching battle as well. That is also a big part of this. If for some reason stuff goes left and Doc has the upper hand, that experience can knock him off, coupled with that lacking depth in the back there. And hopefully they have no injuries for themselves. But that's really what I'm looking at there. That's how I see that series. I'm going to lean into what I believe is the truth, which is without a healthy Joel Embiid to start the series, home court advantage is going to have a very, very serious tell on this series. It's going to tell the story. Boston's going to get them first 2 games at home probably, and then from there Boston probably figure out how to coast throughout the rest of this series. So yeah, I'm going to lean into Boston in 6 with respect to Joel Embiid, the potential of him playing game 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5. He plays all them games. This is going 6, maybe even 7 if he's healthy and plays his best. So, for the sake of Philadelphia Sixers fans, hopefully that knee is 100% to start the series somehow. And if that's the case, you're going to live and die with what he does, and that's a good thing, obviously. So, yeah, that's what I got to say, man. Joel Embiid is going to get to the mountaintop eventually, but it's going to be hard to do that when you keep running into situations like this where he's starting the series hurt. It's always something. It's a knee, it's a stomach, it's something that's keeping him from leading his team to the end. And so I don't know what they need to do in regards to him, but I will tell you this. He needs more size behind him. They were doing great when they had Drummond. You know, they had DeAndre Jordan, all these different guys that they put behind him, but they have got to find somebody that they can keep behind him. You got to use one of them draft picks and get a damned center that's going to always develop behind Joel Embiid so that when you put Joel Embiid out there, or rather when he's out, you can put somebody in place that has upside and that can really go, man. They have got to invest in a dang center that is not expensive but very high level. You know, that because you keep trying to replace him every year with these $1 million guys, and some years you just don't get it. You're not able to attract that piece for whatever reason this year. So now you got Montrezl Harrell at like 6'9" coming in for Joel Embiid. Throws your whole situation off. So they got to get themselves an adequate backup for this man, and I would feel a lot better for them if everybody they had behind him wasn't undersized. And so, you know how we value size over here. I just think they're dropping the ball in that situation. And I think it's going to cost them in this series, likely. So, that's what I see there. It's going to be too much Robert Williams, too much Al Horford, too much Jason Tatum. That's just too much length to have to deal with undersized players, man. You're asking Paul Reed and McDaniels and Tobias Harris to rebound over people that are simply bigger than them. So, that's what I see there. That's exactly what I see there. They need a long-term permanent backup for this man. So that's what I'm gonna say. Celtics in 6, just to be on the safe side, even though this thing can go all different types of ways. At the end of the day, I'm gonna roll with Missoula's boys, and see them get into the Eastern Conference Finals as expected. But do respect what I told you at the beginning of this series. I mean this video rather. The beginning of this video. Them 4 dudes back there in the Boston team, you do not want them on the floor for too long. BDL 44. I thank you all for watching.